Welcome back. I've told this next story many times. When I was a kid, I used to have a morning paper route, and my father was the last customer on my paper route. And I used to have to get up very early, 4 o'clock in the morning, and go and collect my papers and get done delivering the papers by 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's the time that my dad left to catch the bus to go to work. In those days I had an old bicycle, and it was a very noisy old bicycle. It rattled and made all sorts of strange noises, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, as I'm riding up the road, it's making noise, and it always seemed to wake up this dog that lived about 4 houses from where I lived. And this dog had the most fierce sounding bark. I never saw the dog, thank heavens, because I didn't want to see the dog. So one day in particular, I'm riding my rattly old bicycle up the road, and I hear the dog barking away, and I'm going, oh yeah, the dog's barking away. And I glanced over, and the gate was open, and the dog comes out, ah! Jesus, scared the heck out of me. The topic in this video is an analysis of that fight-flight response. Now just think about it for a second. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm probably not really wide awake. But after I got scared like that, I was wide awake, yeah. I would have yelled. I did yell. I yelled so loudly I woke my father up. I couldn't see myself, I may have gone pale. I was so scared, I went pale, went white as a ghost. I was tensed. I grabbed my bicycle as hard as I possibly could, and my heart rate went up. All of those kinds of features, all of those reactions, I didn't plan. They were all massive stimulation of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. It was preparing me to either ride my bicycle as fast as I could or fight or flight. That's what it's called, the fight or flight response. I just want to detail some of those things. Fight or flight response. There's 6 things that we can actually think about with the fight-flight response, and I'm going to number them. We'll mention each one in detail here. The first one is it increases your alertness. What happens quite simply is the sympathetic neurons to your irises in your eyes can send impulses out to have the irises contract, and when they contract, it makes the pupil bigger. So if I was a little bit asleep or a little bit not too wide awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden, bing, I'm wide awake, totally alert. Right? Increases alertness, contracts the irises of the eye. Number 2 on this list is gasping, or maybe even screaming. Because if you have to go through some fight or some flight, you need more air. You can't just get by with just casual breathing. You have to have a huge intake of air, so you've got all this oxygen able to go to your muscles to generate ATP so you can do something. So that's the second one on this list. Number 3 is your muscles tense up. And that's a readiness thing. Because you have to have some, you're going to do something. So your muscles tense up in preparation for that kind of activity. Going pale. What's happening is the blood's draining away from your face. You're not going to fight anything with your face. Your autonomic nervous system redirects the blood to different parts of your body, to your skeletal muscles. So if you remember back in the circulatory system, we have arterioles that feed capillary beds, and at the end of the arterioles are sphincter muscles. So going into the capillaries, these sphincter muscles can actually constrict and prevent the blood from flowing into a certain capillary bed. That's what happens in the face. If the face isn't getting the blood, you go pale. This blood is being redirected to muscles. So what happens here is the blood is redirected to skeletal muscles. The heart rate increases. The sympathetic neuron going to the SA node in the right atrium sends more impulses down there so that that heart rate's going not 72 beats a minute, 100 and something perhaps. It increases. And another one, obviously this is to get more oxygen around the body. Another one is that the liver secretes glucose. Remember that glucose is stored in the liver in the form of glycogen. Liver releasing glucose puts more glucose into your blood so that your cells can generate more ATP. Glucose is metabolized for energy purposes. So all of those things are what happens when you get really, really scared. There's something else that happens too. This massive stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. Remember, the sympathetic nervous system has, I'll put it in a box just here, noradrenalin. In some places that's spelled with an E, some places it's not spelled with an E. But noradrenalin is the neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system. When you get massive stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system in preparation for fighting or flying, not that we can fly, but you get the idea, this affects, all this noradrenaline affects the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland is a gland that sits on the top of the kidneys. If this is a kidney here, the adrenal gland sits there. And the adrenal gland, the interior of it's called the adrenal medulla. So we have a medulla oblongata, we have a medulla, a central part of this gland here. It will release adrenaline. The adrenal medulla will release adrenaline. Noradrenalin, adrenaline. This is a neurotransmitter. This is a hormone. The hormone is secreted into your blood, it travels around your whole body, and it continues to affect all these things. So if you have an adrenaline rush, you have all these things going on in your body, and it takes a long time for things to go back to normal because the adrenaline just doesn't disappear. I mean, the noradrenaline will stop being secreted, that's fine, things can start going back, but if you have a bunch of adrenaline running around in your body, it takes a while for that adrenaline to get metabolized so that you can get your system back to normal. So that's the fight-flight response. I hope you enjoyed that short presentation. Before we leave it, however, I just want to make sure that we recognize that this is a survival specialization. Thanks very much.